An 8-year-old boy is always bullied by his friends. He is shy, so he has no friends and is lonely. Out of that, he is also disturbed by his parents' rude behavior towards him. Maybe they are overprotective, or maybe they are hiding something from his son. Because of all of that, he makes friends with a monster to kill his parents. But after that, what he finds out is shocking and unexpected. We'll know the story of the movie today, called Cobweb. It's truly a horror and mystery experience. Let's begin. In the first scene, we see a boy named Peter. He looks sad and depressed. In the night, he is sleeping. Then he hears some cracking noises behind the wall of his room. He wakes up and tries to hear the sound. He knocks on the wall. Soon after, someone also knocks on behind the wall. He gets so scared that he goes to his parents' room. His mom checks the wall and says she doesn't hear anything. She says that the house they live in is very old, so this type of noise is common. Also, she says that Peter imagines things. So all this is just on Peter's head, not in real. The next day, he goes to school by school bus. On the bus, some kids bully him. That day, a new substitute teacher named Miss Devine comes to their class to teach them. When the class is over, Peter is still sitting at his desk. Miss Devine asks him why he's still there. He should play outside with friends. But Peter says he doesn't like playing with friends and wants to sit there alone. Then Miss Devine says that's okay. Halloween is coming. So Miss Devine decorates the class and tells Peter he could help her. Then Peter sees a spider on his desk and he gets scared. Then Miss Devine catches the spider with a glass, and they both take it to the window and free it. At the dinner, Peter says to his parents Mark and Carol that he wants to go to trick or treat on Halloween. But they refuse his request, saying a few years ago, a girl disappeared on Halloween by going to the trick or treat. That night, Peter hears a girl's voice calling his name from behind the wall in his room. He screams, being so afraid, and jumps out of bed. Mark comes to his room to check. His dad Mark says it's been due to the rats. So the next day, Mark takes Peter to the storeroom and takes a packet of rat poison. They spill the poison on the floor. Peter says it smells like cinnamon. Then Mark says not all the things are as sweet as it seems. Peter gets sad about killing the rats. Mark says that sometimes they must make tough decisions to protect their family. The next day at school, every kid is drawing monsters and witches for Halloween, but Miss Devine sees that Peter is drawing him sleeping in his room with the words, "Help me." Miss Devine is a little worried. Miss Devine wants to know about Peter from his parents. So she goes to Peter's house after the school. She knocks on the door and Peter's mom Carol opens the door. Miss Devine shows the drawing to Carol and asks Carol about Peter. Then Carol says he's fine. He just over-imagines things. After that, Carol shuts the door, goes to Peter's room, and asks Peter about the drawing. She asks why he's asking for help from his teacher. Then Peter says he's not asking for help, but the girl behind the wall of his room asks. Carol assumes that's his imagination as well and goes out of the room. That night, Peter hears the girl talking to him again from behind the wall. She says she wants to be friends with Peter. And Peter agrees. The next day at school, Peter makes a Halloween pumpkin. But a boy named Brian who bullied him on the bus breaks the pumpkin. Peter gets sad and cries on the bed in his room. Then the girl behind the door says he is strong. He doesn't need to be afraid of Brian and he can stand by himself. So the next day at school, Brian gets caught and he gives a new pumpkin to Peter. But Peter remembers what the girl said to him and he pushes Brian from the stairs after the class is over. Brian's leg is broken. Obviously, that was the idea of the girl. Peter's parents are invited to the school. They say Peter hasn't done this kind of thing before, so it must be an accident. But the school rusticates Peter. At home, Mark gets angry and he gives Peter a punishment for his action. Mark and Carol take Peter to the basement and lock him there. Peter sees an underground cage in the basement. He opens the door and tries to look down. He sees a teddy bear inside and nothing else. At school, Miss Devine checks the students' maths test papers. She writes down her number on Peter's paper. Then she comes to Peter's house to give the paper. Carol opens the door. Then Mark comes and he invites Miss Devine to come inside. Carol doesn't like that. Miss Devine goes inside. Mark carries a hammer with one of his hands and gives a cup of coffee to Miss Devine. Mark's hand is also bleeding and he says that was an accident when he was working. Miss Devine asks them which school they will send Peter to now. But Mark says Peter will be on homeschooling. Carol will teach him. But Miss Devine suggests they should give Peter's admission to a school. But Carol says she won't let her son away. Mark says Peter needs family. On the other hand, Peter hears the conversation between them from the basement. Miss Devine wants to meet Peter and asks them about where Peter is. Then they say he is punished and he's in his room. Carol gets angry and says some words to Miss Devine like why she's so interested in their son and she's not even his teacher anymore, and comes to their house without an invitation. Miss Devine didn't know anything and Carol loves her son and she will not do any bad to him. Peter gets to know that Miss Devine has come to his house. So he knocks on the basement door and screams for help. Miss Devine suspects them that they did something bad to Peter. Mark asks Miss Devine to leave. While leaving the house, Miss Devine hears the door knocking sound and asks Mark what that banging noise is. Mark lies to her saying that is the sound of the washing machine. Then Miss Devine leaves Peter's house. She gets afraid seeing the behavior of Peter's parents. After that, Carol takes Peter out of the basement. They ask Peter about what he has learned from his mistake. Peter says that he will not lie and imagine things. He will be a good boy. They take Peter to the bed to sleep. After that, Peter goes to the wall, knocks on it, and tries to hear. Then the girl knocks too. Peter says his parents locked him in the basement. Then the girl says she knew it and warns Peter, saying his parents are evil. Peter wants to see the girl. But she says he will be afraid of her looks. But Peter promises he will not scream. Then she says there is a hole under the wallpaper. Peter removes the wallpaper and looks through the hole. The girl also sees through the hole. By seeing her eyes, Peter gets scared. But she says she is Peter's sister. Mom and Dad hate her and lock her behind the wall. She waited for Peter to grow up to help her out. She says there is a secret door behind the big wall clock in their parents' room. Peter has to remove the clock and open the door for her. She also says that Peter's time also comes and Mom and Dad will do the same with Peter as well. She says the lost girl on Halloween was killed by Mom and Dad. She tells Peter to see the buried place in the garden if he doesn't believe it. The next day, Peter goes to the garden and digs a place. He sees a human skull under the soil. He gets so scared and believes that his parents are evil. Peter tells his sister that he will take her out of the wall and then they will run away. Then she says how. Peter then takes his test paper where Miss Devine wrote her number. Peter decides to ask Miss Devine for help. Peter calls Miss Devine and asks for help. But Mom sees him doing that. She gets angry and she forcefully takes him to his room. She sees the hole in the wall. Seeing that, she gets anxious and scared. Because they locked his sister behind their room and she somehow crawled to Peter's room. She asks what the girl has told Peter. Peter says nothing. Then she says that will be Peter's fault if something happens. In the night, Peter secretly hears his parents' conversation in the downstairs. They seem afraid and nervous. Then they see Peter and Peter quickly goes to his room and pretends to sleep. Mark says to Peter that he needs Peter's help the next day in the garden. Mark has a little problem and he needs to fix it. Peter gets scared thinking his mom and dad know everything and they will kill his sister and put him under the wall. The next morning, Mark takes Peter to the garden. But to Peter's surprise, Mark says their pumpkins have been infected by black rot. So they need to dig a hole and put all the infected pumpkins. That day, Brian's elder brothers come in a van to see Peter's house to give Peter a lesson. They plan to come to Peter's house in the night. That night, Peter gives the rats poison to his parents' soup for dinner. Mark and Carol eat the soup. Mark says the soup tastes different. Carol says it smells like cinnamon. Then Mark understands that Peter has mixed rat poison in their soup. Mark gets angry and screams at Peter. Peter says they hurt his sister. Mark tells Carol to call 911. But Peter already cut the telephone wire. Soon after, Mark vomits bloody food and he dies on the spot. After that, Carol takes a knife and chases Peter. Peter runs upstairs. But Carol grabs his legs and tries to stop him. Carol also vomits blood on the stairs. Peter kicks her and she falls through the stairs into the floor. She hurts herself with the knife she is holding. Peter goes to her to take the keys to their room. Then suddenly Carol becomes conscious and says to Peter not to let his sister out. But Peter doesn't listen to her and goes to their room. Carol dies on the floor. Peter goes to their parents' bedroom and removes the clock. His sister asks him if he kills his mom and dad. Peter says yes. Obviously, that was his sister's idea too. She says Peter is a good boy. Peter sees the secret door behind the clock and he opens it. Soon after his sister comes out, she looks creepy. Peter gets afraid and he goes to his room and locks the door. On the other hand, Brian's brothers come to Peter's house. They go inside the house and destroy some household things. Peter hides under the bed in his room. One brother goes to Peter's room and he tries to find Peter. On the other hand, another brother sees the blood of Peter's parents on the ground. Then suddenly Peter's sister crawls on the wall and hides behind the piano. Her hair is so long and messy and covered with cobwebs. A brother sees her hiding and he goes to check. Then she grabs his legs and drags him. She kills him violently. Then she kills Brian and his brothers one by one very violently. On the other hand, Peter calls Miss Devine and explains her everything. She rushes to Peter's house. Peter's sister comes to Peter's room by crawling. Peter is under the bed. She reveals to Peter that when she was born, Mom and Dad got upset and screamed at her looks. Because she was born deformed. They locked her in that secret room. She had lived with cobwebs and rats. There she learned to bite and crawl. She had somehow crawled and scratched into Peter's room to manipulate him to make her free. After saying that, she drags Peter from under the bed, takes him to the secret door, and locks him there. On the other hand, Miss Devine reaches Peter's home and she goes inside. She sees the bodies and blood on the floor. She gets afraid and tries to call 911. Then Peter's sister attacks her. Peter screams to Miss Devine that she should run. But Miss Devine goes upstairs to save Peter. Peter's sister follows Miss Devine. Miss Devine locks the door. Peter's sister then goes to the secret door and goes inside. Peter says to Miss Devine that she's coming to him. Then Miss Devine breaks the wall in Peter's room. She takes Peter out of there and they try to get out of the house. But the sister grabs Peter and takes him inside the house again. She locks Peter this time in the underground cage in the basement. There Peter sees the teddy bear named Sarah. So we get to know that his sister's name is Sarah. Sarah comes down to the cage. Then we see her face for the first time. She is deformed and looks very creepy. She says not everybody is as perfect as Peter. She's a monster and no one loves her. On the other hand, Miss Devine comes to the basement to save Peter. Sarah attacks her again and is about to kill her. But Peter drags Sarah's long hair from the cage and he gets up the cage with the help of Sarah's hair. Sarah is unable to move. Then Miss Devine gets the opportunity to attack Sarah and pushes her to the cage. Peter shuts the cage door and locks it. Sarah begs Peter from inside to open the cage. She tries to simp Peter saying he is her brother and they are family. Peter also killed his mom and dad. So there's no difference between Peter and her. But Peter says he's not like her. Sarah says that Peter cannot get rid of her. She will always be with him. Every night, Peter will imagine her. He will see Sarah in nightmares. After that, Miss Devine and Peter leave locking Sarah again in the basement. At the end scene, we see Peter see exactly what Sarah said. He goes to bed to sleep and he sees her long hair under the blanket in his bed. Then a shadow behind him appears. Peter looks back and sees Sarah. That implies that Peter's fear is another form of Sarah and this childhood traumatic event of his will haunt him forever. Whenever his fear arises, Sarah will be alive inside him. Maybe he will get rid of it with therapy etc. in the future. The movie ends here. If you like the video, please subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. Thank you so much for watching till the end. As a special bonus, if you're wondering whose was that skull that Peter found in his garden. I think it was the skull of that disappearing girl on Halloween. Sarah probably killed her and Mark and Carol buried her in their garden to hide the truth. After that, they locked Sarah in the hidden room and their mental state also became unstable. What do you think? Please write it down in the comment. You can support me by watching this video shown on your screen. I will see you there. Bye.